Hi, everyone. I'm Kat Abner, Vice President of Community Impact at the Fund for the Arts. And we're so glad to have you here with us tonight to talk about ArtsMatch. We have a PowerPoint to share with you. Most of this information comes straight from our grant guidelines. And you're going to hear today from multiple members of our team. So I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint and we will get started. Okay. So as you all know, we're all here to talk about ArtsMatch for racial equity. This is the second of our 2 applicant information sessions. The same information was presented in the first session, which was held last week, but there may have been different questions raised at the end. So if you're curious about what those questions were from other potential applicants, you can go onto our website and go to the ArtsMatch page, and there's a recording of that conversation available to you. And then after today's meeting, we will also post this recording. So today you're going to hear from me, Kat, as well as Jordan and Allison. Jordan's our impact coordinator and Allison's our impact intern. They're both going to cover some really great information about ArtsMatch. And then you can also reach us at grants@fundforthearts.org. That email address, when you send an email, actually goes to both me and Jordan. So no matter when you send it, you're going to get at least one of us as a response. So our agenda for today is to talk about what ArtsMatch is and how does it work, and then talk a little bit about what the theme for this cycle of ArtsMatch is. We'll go over the timeline, what the eligibility is for submitting an application, how you can use the funds if your project is selected, how your project proposal will be reviewed, and also if you're selected for a project, what's expected of you as a grantee. And then we're going to shift gears a little bit and actually walk you through how you submit a project proposal. So we're going to leave the PowerPoint presentation and I'll walk you through our website. So what is ArtsMatch? So ArtsMatch is a matching grant opportunity that expands the capacity of cultural providers to create special arts-based projects. Each year, ArtsMatch has a specific theme, and all the projects that are selected address and advance that theme. If you're selected as a project, you receive a crowdfunding page on the Fund for the Arts website, and then the Fund for the Arts works with you to promote your project, to encourage donors to make donations in support of your project. And then any of the dollars that are raised via your crowdfunding page, the Fund for the Arts matches that dollar for dollar. So ArtsMatch has a couple of different objectives in that one, it's funding for you and your project, but also we want to help build the capacity of you and your artistic practice by raising awareness about your existence and the work that you do, and then hopefully also drawing new donors to your work. So the theme for this cycle of ArtsMatch is advancing racial equity, diversity, and inclusion in Kentucky through arts-based projects. So with the racial reckoning that has happened in our country over the last several months, we felt that ArtsMatch would be a great opportunity to highlight that and recognize that and put some resources into advancing racial equity. So now I'm going to turn it over to Allison, and she is going to talk about the timeline.
Thanks, Kat. So yeah, before we get into the logistics of this grant, we just want to point out that there is a frequently asked questions document on the ArtsMatch webpage. You're welcome to ask questions in this presentation and email us, but that resource is also there for you to utilize as well. So as far as the timeline goes, on February 5th, we had our first applicant info session. Today is our second applicant info session. So I think we're all on the ball there. March 17th is when the applications will be due at 11:59. On April 9th, applicants will be notified of the grant award. And then on April 16th at 10 a.m., there will be a grantee orientation. We go ahead and recommend that you all, if you're applying, do go ahead and block out that date in your calendar, just to make sure you have that commitment made in case you get the grant. From April 22nd to June 30th, the crowdfunding window will be open. And from July 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2022, the projects will be implemented. On February 1st, 2022, the mid-year impact report will be due, and then the final impact report will be due on September 30th, 2022. All right, so in terms of who can apply, any cultural provider in Kentucky may apply. These consist of artists, artist teams or collectives, arts and culture organizations, schools, community centers or community-based organizations, neighborhood associations, etc. As an applicant, you may submit a proposal as an individual, a group or organization without tax exempt status, or as a nonprofit organization. On the application, you will be asked to identify which group you will be submitting a proposal as. So keep that in mind as you formulate ideas for your project in your head. And then also in terms of who may apply, just keep in mind that all project activities must take place in Kentucky and benefit Kentucky residents. You do not have to be a 501c3 or be affiliated with a 501c3 to apply. And if you apply as an individual or as a non-tax exempt organization or group and are selected for a grant award, your grant award will be considered taxable income by the IRS. So in terms of eligible expenses, ArtsMatch funds may be used to cover costs associated with planning, implementing, and evaluating projects that address the theme. It is recommended that costs associated with planning and evaluation, like staff time or salary of your project, do not exceed 20% of the total budget. We would like to point out that this 20% does not include teaching artist fees that are associated with the implementation of your project. ArtsMatch funds may not be used to cover general operating expenses or event/season sponsorships. And now Jordan's going to take over and talk about more details.
Thanks, Allison. And hi, everyone. My name is Jordan Turpin. As Kat mentioned, I'm the impact coordinator for Fund for the Arts, and I really enjoy getting to work with Kat and Allison on this team, and just thanking you for being here today. I wanted to remind everyone before I get going, because I think we had a few latecomers, we will put this on our website, this recording with the grant guidelines, but if you want to get that recording a little bit sooner, make sure you put your email in the chat. Also, at any time, feel free to put questions in the chat. We'll take time to answer questions at the end, but if you have one, if you're like me and you're like, I need to write that down before I forget, go ahead and toss it in the chat whenever is convenient for you. So I'm going to pick up with the funding limit. I always like to talk about money. So this is what you can request when on your application for the match and also the crowdfunding page. So you may request between $500 and $20,000 in Fund for the Arts matching funds. And we've included 3 examples here that I think cover a wide range of what might come up. So if your total project request or your total project cost is $20,000, that means you'll raise $10,000 on the crowdfunding page, and then the Fund for the Arts will match $10,000. If your total project cost is $40,000, the crowdfunding will be $20,000, Fund for the Arts will match $20,000. Now, if you have a really big project that's, say, $100,000, the most that we can match, that we will match, and the most that you can raise through the crowdfunding platform is $20,000 each. So say you have a $100,000 project cost, your crowdfunding will be $20,000. Fund for the Arts will match $20,000, and then it'll be up to you to raise the additional, for this example, $60,000 through other sources. Your application will be scored using the following criteria. So your ability to successfully execute the proposed project, a clear description of the project and activities, a clear description of the target audience, a demonstration of how the project addresses and advances racial equity, inclusion, and diversity for the proposed project's target audience and the community in which your target audience resides. Alignment of the project's outcomes with the project's activities, strength of data collection methods and how data will be used to demonstrate the degree to which outcomes are achieved, a realistic promotional and fundraising plan that will result in the applicant raising the funds necessary to support the project, because we want you to hype up your crowdfunding and get that money raised. And then also congruency of the project timeline, budget expenditures, and the project description and outcomes. Funding priority will be given to applicants who are not currently receiving Fund for the Arts Sustaining Impact grants, applicants who have never received Fund for the Arts funding, and applicants from traditionally underrepresented and underserved populations. But I do want to stress, if you do fall into, if you're a SIG recipient or you have received funding, that doesn't mean you're ineligible. Please do still apply, that you still very much so stand a chance. It's definitely worth applying for. A panel of independent peer reviewers will read and score the applications. The Fund for the Arts and Race Equity Task Force, utilizing the review panelist scores, will make the award recommendations. The Fund for the Arts staff does not score the applications. Within 30 days after the crowdfunding window closes, one single payment will be issued to the grantee. The payment will include the funds raised to the crowdfunding page and the matching funds provided by Fund for the Arts. So just a few things to note about that. All fundraising transactions must be made through the ArtsMatch crowdfunding platform hosted on the Fund for the Arts website. Grantees may raise funds only during the crowdfunding window. Any funds raised outside of the crowdfunding window or crowdfunding page will not be eligible for matching funds. So we don't want to discourage you if you have other fundraisers going on, keep those up, but only the money that is raised on the crowdfunding page will be eligible for matches. Grantees who do not reach their crowdfunding goals will be required to submit a proposal with an updated budget that aligns with the amount of funds raised via crowdfunding, plus matching dollars to the Fund for the Arts for approval before the grant payment will be issued and project implementation may begin.
Jordan, before we move to the next slide, I wanted to add that there have been a couple of instances in the past where we have allowed fundraising transactions that were made outside of the crowdfunding page. So if you have like a corporate donor or a foundation that wants to contribute to their project, they often will not make their contributions through a credit card payment. And so we have allowed grantees to like get checks from those organizations to go toward their crowdfunding goal.
Thank you, Kat. So once you've applied and you've been approved, what's next? What are the expectations? There will be a letter of agreement for signing and that outlines all the roles and responsibilities of the grantee and Fund for the Arts. We'll ask that you work with our team to develop content for your crowdfunding page that could include a logo, photos, information, etc. Attend a grantee orientation, which Allison mentioned is on April 16th. Again, promote your project to raise funds, get that money raised. There will be a mid-year impact report and final report. Good news is those will be aligned similarly to how you turn in the grant. So you'll get acquainted with that process and that system. Recognize the Fund for the Arts and LG&E and KU Foundation as a donor, and then participate in at least one Fund for the Arts advocacy activity. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kat.
Thanks, Jordan. So now we're going to actually talk about the application. So how do you apply? So you can submit your application in 3 different ways. So the first is in writing in an online form. The second is in audio or video recordings, providing the links to those recorded responses in an online form. And then there's also a downloadable paper application. So again, you can pick the format that works best for you. Our reviewers will receive the same information across all the applicants, so submit in the way that makes the most sense for you. Another thing to note is that you can propose more than one project, but let's say you have 2 projects and they both score really highly, only one of your projects can actually be funded. So just keep that in mind as you're doing your work. So I'm going to navigate away from the PowerPoint and actually go to our website to show you how you can find the application information. Okay, here we go. All right, so to find the application, you're just going to go to fundforthearts.org. And then at the top, you're going to hover over apply for funding. And what you'll notice is that in the drop-down menu, there are 4 options. You can go to for schools and community centers, for organizations, and for individuals. Any 3 of those will get you the information that you need. So I'm just going to click on for schools and community centers. And then what you'll find is there's a little icon here for ArtsMatch. So you can click on ArtsMatch, the title, or you can click on apply, either one. So once you get to the ArtsMatch page, one thing I want to note is that we do have all of this information translated into Spanish. So if you are more comfortable submitting your application in Spanish, you are more than welcome to do that. We will have reviewers who are bilingual. So I'm just going to navigate to this page to show you it's exactly the same information, just all translated. So back to the main page. So there's just a little summary information here about ArtsMatch, everything that we've already covered in the PowerPoint. And then about halfway down the page, you're going to find 6 different icons. And what we recommend you do is start with the grant guidelines. Again, we've covered a lot of this information already, but we recommend that you read through this information before you start your application. It just goes over for you, you know, the eligibility requirements, a summary of what you're going to be asked to provide, and then again, the full timeline and what you're allowed to ask for. So going back to the ArtsMatch page. So this is where you find the 3 ways to submit your application. I'm going to show you starting with the online written application. So let's say this is the first time you come to the website and you're going to be starting your application kind of for the first time. So you'll click here. If you're a new applicant to the Fund for the Arts, meaning you've never applied for anything from the Fund for the Arts before, you're going to go to New Applicant, and it's going to ask you for your email address and then to create a password. And once you've done that, then you'll be able to access the application. If you have applied for a grant before from the Fund for the Arts, you're just going to go click on Start Your Application, and then you'll just log in with the same email and password that you've used in the past. If you've forgotten your password, it happens all the time, just click on Forgot Password and you'll be prompted with how to change it. So I've already got my account set up and I'm ready to start. So I'm just going to log in. And the first page is just summary information. Again, just a reminder about the process. At the bottom of each page, there's a questions section where you can click on grants@fundforthearts.org, and it will pull up your email. So you can send us a question via email from inside the application. The first tab is contact information. So this is where we want to know about your organization and then also who is the main point of contact. So you're going to tell us who you are. So if you're applying as an individual, it's just going to be your first and last name. But if you're applying as an organization or group, you're going to give us the name of your organization or group. You're then going to tell us about how you're applying, like Allison referred to earlier. Are you an individual, a group, a nonprofit, or an organization that's not a nonprofit? You're going to share with us your location information, so your street address. And then we need to know kind of like who's the executive director or the kind of authorized, you know, contact for your project or your organization. So you'll give us that information there. And then we want to know who's the primary contact for the application. It could be the same as the executive director, but it could be someone different. So just let us know who you want to receive communications about your grant application. So that's the primary contact. Then the next section is about website and social media. So you don't have to have all of these social media outlets, but if you do have them, please let us know. A lot of times the reviewers say they're really helpful to get more context about the work that you do or your artistic style. The next section is background information, and this is where you're going to tell us about your experience. So we want to know, what is your primary artistic discipline? So you'll just select from the drop-down menu. You'll tell us about your organization. So if you're an organization and you have a mission statement, you could include it there. Or if you're applying as a group or an individual, you could share, like an artistic bio or a summary of the kind of work that you do. We asked for you to provide a short explanation or description of a past project that you've done that's similar to the current one you're proposing. If you haven't done a project before like this, that's okay too. Just let us know. And then if you have any partners that are going to be critical to the project being completed, share who they are and what their role is. And then the last question on this page is to tell us when you were founded as an organization, or if you're applying as an individual, like how many years of experience you have as an artist. The next section is where we start to talk about the project itself. So first thing you're going to do is tell us the title of your project, and then you're going to describe the project and the steps that you're going to undertake to complete it. Give us a bullet point timeline of your project. So we know that a lot of times you're not going to put a ton of effort into creating a timeline because you don't know if you're getting the funding, and that's okay. So just kind of sketch out for us what you think it would look like should you receive the funding. It doesn't have to be incredibly detailed. The next part is your audience. So tell us about who your audience is. Provide as much descriptive demographic data as you can. So, what's the racial ethnic background, the age breakdown, are you serving persons with disabilities or different income levels? So share as much of that information as you can. And then if you can list for us the key areas that you're going to be serving. So if your project focuses on a specific county, you can just say my project serves all of Jefferson County. Or if you're focused on a specific zip code, you could say I'm really honing in my project on the 40222 zip code or a specific neighborhood. And you don't have to describe them, just list them. And then how many people do you think your project is going to serve? The last section of this page is about impact. So tell us specifically how your project is going to advance racial equity, inclusion, and diversity for your target audience and the community in which your target audience lives. The next thing is about outcomes. So what are you specifically trying to achieve with your project? What are the positive changes that you're hoping will happen because of your project? So share what those are. And then the last question is about how you're going to collect data. So what tools are you going to use and how often are you going to use them? So if you're going to use a pre and post survey, and you're going to give the pre-survey out in July and then the post-survey out in the following August, just put that structure in there for us. The next section is budget, and this is where you're going to break down for us what the total cost of the project is, what is your crowdfunding goal, and how much money would you like for the Fund for the Arts to match. So go back to that slide that Jordan explained about your project budget. So let's say your project budget is $20,000. You're going to put that as the total cost. Your crowdfunding goal will be $10,000, and your Fund for the Arts match would be $10,000. So it's the $20,000 total, 10 plus 10 to get you to $20,000. If you already have some funding committed to your project, that's great. Share that information with us in this field. If you have funding committed or you don't have funding committed, it doesn't give you any kind of advantage in the scoring process. It's just information for us to know. And then tell us what your fundraising and promotional plan is. So how do you plan to reach out to donors? How do you plan to get information about your project out into the public to encourage people to donate? And then the last section or last question of this section is budget. So if you can just give us kind of like a list of how you plan to spend the funding, that would be really helpful. Again, we recommend that any costs associated with planning and evaluation does not exceed 20% of the total budget. So if you use this example here, you can see that there's teaching artist fees. That is for, we would consider that to be implementation, not part of planning or evaluation. So you don't have to worry about the teaching artist fees as being part of that 20%. The next section is attachments, and this is optional. You don't have to include attachments if you don't want to. We often hear from reviewers that providing work samples or letters of support is helpful, but it's not required. So you're allowed to attach up to 3 documents, or you can include examples that are available via web link in the text boxes. We do ask for you to provide a short description of what the work sample or letter of support is, so that the reviewers just have a little bit of context before they open up the document or the link. The last section of the application is demographic information. So at the Fund for the Arts, we're committed to funding projects and organizations and artists that are reflective of our community. In order to track that, we need to know a little bit more about your background. So all of this information is kept confidential. We don't share this with our reviewers. It's just used internally for us, again, to track how much funding is going to different demographics. So we ask you to tell us about your race and ethnicity. And if you're applying as a group or an organization, we ask that you share the race and ethnicity of your organization leader. If you're applying as an individual, then it would be your individual identification. If you are applying as a group or an organization, so there are going to be lots of people or just multiple people working on leading the project, we do ask that you summarize for us the racial and ethnic breakdown of those people. Next, we ask for gender identity. And this, again, if you're applying as an organization or a group, would be for the group leader. If you're an individual, it's how you personally identify. There is an option to self-describe. So if you prefer to do that, please do so. And then we ask if you, your group leader, or any of your key team members belong to any of the following communities. You can check as many as you like. And then there's also a self-describe option, should you choose to do that. So once you've filled in all of your information, you can go to review my application. And what that's going to do is pop up in red all of the fields you left blank. So I haven't filled in anything, and so I have every single field identified. It's just a reminder for me to go back and look at those before I hit submit. You can scroll past that box, and what you'll be able to see is you can click printer friendly version, and that will pop up with like a PDF version of your application. And then you can also email yourself a draft. But then if you scroll down, you'll be able to see the application and all of the fields and what information you have entered. So it's a kind of another check for you as you're working. So let's say, you know, you've logged in and you've filled in some information, but you're not going to finish it all, and you have to move on to something else. That's okay. So from any one of these tabs, let's just go back to budget, for example. At the bottom of the page, you're going to see a button called Save and Finish Later. So if you click on that, it's going to save everything that you've done so far. And then it's going to kind of log you out of the application. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this and show you where you can find your saved application. So let's say you've saved your application, you've moved on, you've closed your window, go back to the Fund for the Arts website. Again, apply for funding, click on any of these three. Go back to ArtsMatch. And if you scroll back down to halfway down the page, there's a button here for continue working on your saved application. So if you click on that, it's going to take you back to a login page, and you're just going to, again, use the same email and password that you've been using and log in. And what this does is it pulls up your applicant account, and you'll be able to see the application you were just working on, which is the one at the top. And then it'll also pull up for you any past applications that you submitted to the Fund for the Arts. So I want to continue working on my ArtsMatch application. So I'm just going to click on that hyperlink, and it's going to open it back up for me to the last page that I was on. All right, so I'm going to close out of this. We're going to go back to the Fund for the Arts page. And we're going to go back to the ArtsMatch page, just so I can show you what the other two application formats look like. So like we said, you can submit audio and video recordings as responses to the questions. So just like with the online written application, you're going to log in or create an account. It has the same summary information. And what you'll notice is that for some of the fields in the audio video recording application, you do have to type some of the responses. Some of them you won't accept links, but we make it really clear for you which way to submit. So on your contact information, you have to type in all of those fields. And then on the background information, that's where you start to see where you can provide links. So it gives you the number of minutes that your recorded response can be. So what you'll do is rather than typing out your response, you'll just provide the link to the recording. We prefer that you use YouTube because that seems to be the most accessible for reviewers. But you can use other platforms. Just make sure that whatever platform you're using, the recordings are not password protected. So if it's password protected, we can't guarantee that the reviewers are going to be able to get in there and listen to or view the recordings. So again, just keep your eye out for which type of response you're allowed to enter for each of the fields. So we're going to go back to the Fund for the Arts page, and I'll show you the downloadable application. So the first icon in the second row, it's going to take you to this page, and you'll just click on this link. It's going to pop up for you either as like open this or as your like typical download notification. And it's a Word document. So you can type your responses into the Word document. You can also handwrite them. It's whatever makes the most sense for you. So if you're going to be typing the responses or handwriting them, you can email us the completed paper application, or you can mail it in via snail mail. What we ask is that the application be physically in our possession, either via email or via the post by the application deadline. So it can't, if you're mailing it, it can't be postmarked because it's not going to get here in enough time for the reviewers to be able to have access to it. So make sure it gets to the office at the Fund for the Arts by the deadline. Okay. And then the last thing that I'll show you on the website is the cultural provider FAQ, which Allison referenced. It's a list of questions that have come up over the years about ArtsMatch. Feel free to reference this, but always you can reach out to us via email or phone. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and come back to you all for any questions that you may have. You can unmute yourself and ask, or feel free to enter something in the chat.
Will it be problematic? Hello, Kat. I'm sorry. Hello,
Hi, Albert.
everyone. Would it be problematic if I was applying as an individual artist as myself and then putting in the application for the drum corps as well?
Not at all. So we consider individuals to be separate from organizations, even if you're employed by an organization. What we would ask, though, is to make sure that you're applying under 2 different email addresses. So like Albert, whenever you apply as the drum corps, that email address, it's going to change all of your information to be the drum corps, like your street address, your phone number. So just make sure when you're applying as Albert, you use your personal email address.
Thank you much.
You're welcome. Gonna open up the chat to see if we have anything there. So for the operating costs, what in detail does that include? We are opening an art gallery. Does that include building maintenance? That's a good question, Tania. So if this is, I would say if this is for the initial startup costs, then you could apply for anything. When we refer to operating costs, it would be like, what are those regular expenses you have year after year for like an existing organization? So I would say you could apply for anything since it's all startup.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I have a question. So our event is usually scheduled for the last week of June, and I saw that the activity has to happen between July and August 30th, I think. So is that a issue?
Yes. So unfortunately, the activity needs to happen after the crowdfunding window closes, because your grant period wouldn't start until July 1st. So, so if there's something that happens after July 1st that you could apply for funding for, please feel free to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Hi, everybody. Is the fund or the project can be presented on, like I'm invited to be again at the photo biennial here in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
So can I present the same work on that project also?
Want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So are you asking about work that you've already created but would be like displaying or exhibiting?
No,
during the
something
period?
that I'm gonna create for the festival,
Mm-hmm.
but I can present it to you and then use it on the festival that is in September.
So you could definitely apply for creating new work. And then whether or not that work goes to the festival, it doesn't matter. So you can apply for funding just to like spend on creating the work. Or if you are saying, I'm going to create the work and I'm going to put it in the festival, you can apply for that too. Does that make sense? So like you can limit your project to whatever phase you want.
Okay.
And if you, as you're working on your application and you have questions, just let us know, because staff doesn't score them. We can look at applications before they get submitted. So if you're like, what about my description in this question? Or am I, hitting the right kind of targets here? We can look at that for you.
I think you gave a fund for $500 to support artists. And I think I received the $500. If that would affect to apply to this grant?
Are you asking if a grant that you received in the past you could use?
Yeah, I think it was a $500 COVID relief.
Oh, yeah. So if you received a grant from us in the past, for anything. You can still apply. You don't have to worry about the COVID relief grants in particular. They were grants, but they weren't, for projects. They were for, personal support. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to reiterate and kind of expand on something Kat said on the application. She specifically with, if you haven't done a project like this before, that box, especially if you're doing it online, is still required for you to be able to submit that application. So if you haven't done, sometimes we get questions about, if I haven't done it, what do I do? Just let us know. Just, I haven't done a project, like simple statement of I haven't done a project like this before will suffice. And that goes with any of the boxes that don't necessarily pertain, to past experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jordan. All right, so there's a question in the chat. If COVID restrictions in the community put the timeline in jeopardy, can we adjust after the grant period begins? Absolutely. So for any of our grant opportunities, we have that grant period, but we know that things happen. So if you have a change for whatever reason, COVID or something happens with a venue contract, whatever it is, all you have to do is contact us and then talk us through what the change is. And then we usually ask you to submit a short paragraph in writing that explains the change. And then we can either extend your grant period or make any other changes that would be necessary so you can still complete the project. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Again, feel free to reach out to us, grants@fundforthearts.org. And we're here to be a resource. So any question you have is a great question. We're happy to help. And with that, we will end our session and send you guys an email with the recording.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.